All right, we should be live here. Someone put in the comments, make sure I sound okay. Just wait a couple minutes here, make sure everyone has time to join in. All good, perfect. Yes. Holy cow, we got a lot of comments on here. Perfect. So just gonna give everyone a couple more minutes here, get people to join in. Appreciate you all joining me today. A little bit different format than what we've done in the past. We used to always do these on Zoom. I feel like that Facebook is a much better avenue. Fortunately for us, most of our clients are already on Facebook. And also, you know what, this is a good thing to share with a lot of other businesses. Obviously, majority of what we do is automotive repair, but really anything that I'm talking about today is going to be good for any small business and really any American. Right now what we're dealing with is stuff that's coming out minute by minute. So really the most important information that we can give out to people is just real-time news as it happens. All right. So someone actually put on here that Zoom servers are not working. So good. It was a good day that I decided to do this on Facebook. Got a lot of familiar faces out here. Where's everyone joining from today? See a couple familiar faces. Got Arizona here. Colorado, South Carolina, Texas, Rhode Island. Awesome. Very cool. I think we got pretty much the whole country represented here. Perfect. Well, you guys came here for news, and so I think we got plenty of people that have already joined. So I want to just kind of get into it and get into what you guys are looking to get information about. So really the biggest reason that we're here today is we're here to talk about the new stimulus package that was passed, the CARES Act. We're going to go into a couple of the acts or the programs that are already in place. But really, I think the most important thing to talk about is the CARES Act. How's that going to affect you? How can we implement that into our business? And what do we need to do to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to stay in operation and to get through this as best as possible? All right. So my name is Hunt Demarest. You can see it there on the screen. I work here for Parr Mellison Associates. And we are an accounting firm based out of Maryland, but all we do is mostly automotive repair shops. So we specialize in automotive repair shops and help shop owners all across the country, whether it's accounting, whether it's taxes, whether it's valuing your business or helping you sell your business, you name it, we've seen it. By specializing in really only one industry, I think that what we can provide for our clients is something that a lot of other accountants can't. A lot of accountants know what's right and wrong for all businesses, but we really give an in-depth look as what are shops doing? What are other shops utilizing that's making them more money? What are strategies in place that help you as a shop owner to be a better business person and to just understand your financials in a better way? So I've done a couple of these webinars already. You can see we shared them on our Facebook page. So we went into different things about how do we maintain cash in a shortage like this? How do we defer our loan payments? We talked about some of the other SBA disaster loans and other options out there. If you haven't watched those videos, I'd recommend going to look at them now. It's a huge resource. Really the only thing that I'm going to stress on it right now is if you haven't already, talk to your banks about deferring loan payments. It's the number one easiest thing that you can do right now to save money. If we can use the bank's money, we can use other people's money to get through this, then that's what we're needing to do. At the end of the day, the biggest thing that I'm making sure that my clients have is I'm making sure that they have cash, right? At the end of the day, if your business goes down, if stuff slows down, as long as you still have cash in the bank, we can make it through this. And that's the number one objective that any business right now. How do we get through this? Now, a lot of this is tricky because I've been talking to clients and shops all across the country. If I told you that you had 6 weeks to get through this, you'd be able to come up with a plan, amount of cash that you need, a sales target to hit, what you can do as far as furloughs or structuring your team into different resources. But the big unknown here is we don't know how long this is going to last, right? We don't know if this is something that's going to be over in 4 weeks or 4 months. And for a lot of people, depending on where you are in the country is really what it's going to come down to as far as how long it's going to last for you. Obviously, we see right now New York City's hitting the hardest. There's no end in sight for them, at least in the next couple of weeks. Now, they could just be ahead of the schedule with the rest of the country is. We just don't know. This entire process is a huge unknown. And really, it's just kind of evolving in front of us every single day, really every single hour. That really kind of goes back to what we've been doing. My biggest objective here is I'm trying to get the information out to my clients and other shop owners around the country, news as we get it. What I'm going to stress is now is not the time to try and figure this stuff out on your own, right? This is changing. This is very complicated. Some of the stuff that we're going to get into is complicated for me, and I do this professionally for a living. So you need to be leaning on your resources that you have, right? Lean on your accountant. If you have a question, call them up. Hey, how does this affect me? Is this something I can partake in? Is this something I should utilize? Do you think this is the best strategy for me? Lean on your bank. A lot of these things that we're going to get into a little bit later, this is going to be directly done with your bank. So let's lean on the resources that we have to make the most educated decision that we can. And at the end of the day, really my best piece of advice on all of this is new for everyone, right? And so anyone that tells you this is the way that you get through it, it's really just an opinion. But what I want to do is I want to utilize my resources as a business owner and say, all right, let me lean on the professionals to get their opinion. And then I'm going to take this into consideration, take a deep breath, and then figure out what to do next. I know that there's a lot of uncertainty out there of saying, hey, should I do this? Should I do that? Really, what we need to be doing is take a deep breath and let's figure out with the information that we have today, what is the best thing that I can do for my business, for my family, for my employees today? Some of these things we're not going to be able to figure out a plan for next week because we don't know what next week is going to lead to. Just like for Maryland, today in Maryland, we're based in Maryland. For those of you around the country, we're about 35 minutes outside of Baltimore, but in a pretty small town. Unfortunately for us, we had some really bad news over the weekend that a nursing home in our town had an outbreak of about 60 patients. It made the national news. This is a town where I kind of felt like we were insulated from a lot of this. And within the course of, an hour, all of a sudden we're kind of the focal point of Maryland as far as the outbreaks here. And so, really, this is just something that we have to just keep an eye on, right? No one knows the answer to this. And we're just going to do our best with the information we have to get through this. All right. So let's kind of get into the nuts and bolts of this. We have about 760 people on this stream. I still see people sharing where they are listening in from. And so I'm going to try to get to questions as fast as I possibly can. Okay. But really, I'm going to save a lot of this to the end. If you see something that I'm going through, I'm going to be trying to glance over at the comments. I'm guessing that they're going to be coming too fast. But what I'm going to try to do is we're going to get through all of this, and then I'll open it up to the floor at the end, and I'll get as much questions answered as I possibly can. All right. So let me see. I just saw a comment that the YouTube page is not working. I think that was Dave. Hey, Dave, if you're listening to this, try to refresh that YouTube link again. It looks like it might be working now. If someone else on here is already on the YouTube stream, if they could comment that they are, in fact, listening to it and it's working. YouTube is fine. Perfect. Thank you, Charlie. All right, so let's get into this. So really where we're at today is we're the end of 3 pieces of legislations or laws that the government has rolled out to help small businesses and to help the country as a whole. The first one that came out with was the SBA disaster loan. Some of you might have already tried to apply for the SBA disaster loan. For those of you that have or attempted to, you can probably agree with me that that program itself was a literal disaster, right? So the website was not made to handle the amount of traffic that they tried to run through that website. So anyone that was applying for that was facing crashes, extremely long hold times. A lot of times I'd be helping clients put in information and it would just spin and spin and spin and keep on loading. Really, that website was used to handle natural disasters, and that's what that website's been in place for. So localized disasters that we've had over the past, whether it's tornadoes, hurricanes, that's what that website was meant to do. Local areas where we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people, maybe 1 million people. Essentially what they did is they set up a website for the entire country. And now they're trying to have almost every single small business around the country try to log in there and try and use that. It's just not what it was meant for, and it ended up crashing. The scariest part about this was that towards the end of this, we had a complete issue with some security. One of my clients was on there and tried to put in their information, and all of a sudden someone else from across the country, a lady's information, social security number, address, all of that was now populated in his screen. He immediately logged off, closed out of this, but then he actually ended up getting some calls from other people around the country saying that his information was actually showing up on their screen. Now, if you notice, if you go to that SBA disaster loan website, it's completely down. You can still fill out the application, but you have to do it manually and upload all the documents. As of right now, I don't recommend anyone going out for the SBA disaster loan. It's been replaced by another package that we feel is a lot stronger, and we feel like that's the best option for right now. Before you get into it, and I know we've had this questions a lot, is if you already apply for the SBA disaster loan, is that going to limit you from being able to get the new payroll protection program stimulus loan? And that is not, and we'll get into specifics on that a little bit later. All right. Perfect. So the next question here is, or the next item that they rolled out was the FMLA leave plan, right? And so FMLA has been around for a number of years now, but it really only applied to large employers. And so what the expanded FMLA package did was it expanded all of these rules to almost all employers around the country. It can get pretty in depth on this one. This is really a case-by-case situation. This is another place where I'm going to be leaning on my professionals. If you think that you're subject to some of these, whether you're paying an employee to stay home because they're in quarantine, whether you have an employee staying at home because they're tending to a family member with quarantine, or you're paying an employee to stay home because they don't have childcare, that is the time where you reach out to your accountant and say, how do we handle this, right? If you start reading down through all these laws and trying to say who qualifies, who doesn't qualify, you're going to get yourself into a bit of a pickle. We also have some legal ramifications to consider here as well. I'm going to do my best as an accountant to answer what we need to do from an accounting side of things. But a lot of times there's an HR level in this, right? Are you legally allowed to provide this? What do you legally have to do as far as benefits? What do you legally have to do as far as paying vacation time or sick pay? There's a lot of things in here that can get very tricky very fast. The last thing we want to do is couple the problem that we have going on right now with a legal or payroll lawsuit issue down the road. So if you think that you're in one of these situations, reach out to your accountant, right? And say, hey, here's what's going on. How should I track this? What can I do to try and use this to my advantage? Okay. Perfect. So let's see here. I think we got someone on here posting a YouTube link. So any of you that joined late on this or having issues with the YouTube link or the Facebook link not working, try and just refresh your screen. For whatever reason, if it's not going to work for you live, this will all be available to download or listen to afterwards as well. All right. I think we're just reading some of these here. Perfect. All right. So let's get into what we're really here for today. The new CARES Act that the Congress has passed last Friday. Now, this has been something that if you've been listening to my webinars, I've been talking about for 2 weeks. We kept on thinking this was around on the horizon. It was going to come out. It's going to come out any minute. The Congress has been arguing about it for about the last week and a half. And as of Friday, they actually officially passed this. It's been signed into law. Before that, we were just kind of going off of assumptions or rumors as far as what it would include. But now we have some, definitive guidelines on what's going to be included in this. There's a lot of talk about what it's going to affect for someone on a personal level, and then also affect a lot of people on a business level. We're going to touch on both of those today and go into what are the big things that we need to know about this. If you have some time and you'd like to read, you could go out and read the 900-page bill itself. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to try to get into some of the big key bullet points. There's some smaller items in there where we're still trying to process how that will affect our clients and how that's going to affect most of the population. But you got to keep in mind that when Congress writes these bills, they're not accountants, right? They're not business owners. They're writing this stuff to put into law. And so some of the things that we're going to see here, we're still not sure exactly on specific situations or maybe loopholes. Everything is kind of ever changing, and we're just going to try and stay on top of that as much as we can. All right. So let's get into the first thing. So personally, there's a lot of talk about this. So we're getting everyone in the country, as long as you make a certain amount of income, you're going to get a check from the government here in a couple weeks. All right. So the check for a personal or individual is going to be $1,200 per person if you make up to $75,000 and you have no children. If you make over $75,000 up to $100,000, it's going to start to be phased out. If you're an individual with no children, you make over $100,000, you're not going to get any check. For a married couple, you can make up to $150,000 and get the full $1,200 check, or it'd be $2,400 for a couple. And then if you have kids, it's $500 per kid. Again, as you go up to about $200,000, this is going to begin to phase out. And I believe a family of two, over $212,000 are going to go to completely nothing. If you look, there's resources out there right now where you can plug in your adjusted gross income and estimate how much of a check that you're going to get coming up. It's one of these things where I see a lot of people arguing about this. What is $1,200 supposed to do for me right now, right? At the end of the day, $1,200 for a lot of people around the country is a significant amount of money. Is it going to fix all of our problems? No, right? But it's something there to help, right? This is not going to be a complete fix. And obviously, that's why it was only a small piece of the stimulus package. But it's definitely doing something, right? It's a lot better than zero. Now, a lot of people have asked specific questions. Hey, is it going to go off my 2018 information or my 2019 information? It's going to go off of whatever the most recent filed tax return that you have. If, let's say that in 2019, you filed your tax returns, you're a single individual, you made $125,000, you're not going to get the $1,200 check in a couple weeks. However, if you were laid off or you had a reduced income for 2020, this year right now, when you go to do your taxes next year, if you should have got that $1,200 check, they're actually going to have that on there as a credit. And so it's not going forever, it's just going to be delayed. Now, one of the things that we don't know, but nothing that we're reading, is if that's going to work backwards, right? If you actually got the check, but then you made too much money, are you going to have to pay that credit back in? There's no stipulations about that as of yet, okay? So let's talk about one of the other things to affect personally, and also somewhat it's going to affect your business as well. And so unemployment benefits. Unemployment benefits have a temporary increase for the next couple months of $600 extra a week. So if your state maximum unemployment benefits were $400 a week, it's now going to be $1,000 a week. Okay, so that's a pretty massive change for a lot of people, because I know a lot of shop owners and business owners that I was talking to are saying, I don't have the work for my team and I want to put them on unemployment. But if you're making a decent amount of money, if you go on unemployment, that's going to be a massive cut in your take-home income. What the government has stepped up and said is saying, hey, we realize that there's going to be a lot of people on unemployment and a lot of highly compensated people on unemployment, and the current rates just don't dictate that. So what they're going to do is they're going to increase the unemployment benefits by $600 a week. Take that from, like I said before, if your state unemployment was $400, you're now going to get $1,000 a week. So something to keep in mind for you if you're kind of in that in between where you don't have a whole lot of work for your employees, but you're looking to kind of make sure that they're going to be taking care of themselves. We need to realize that option's out there, okay? Now, the only thing that I'll say about unemployment and where it relates to a small business is, as far as I'm concerned, your small business is your team. It's your employees. And so while the short-term solution might be to say, hey, I'm going to lay everyone off, if I'm a shop owner, I'm just going to turn wrenches myself. Everyone else is going to go into unemployment. My biggest concern was that is when this does lift, and we know it's going to lift, it's not a matter of if, it's just when, is my team going to be there to pick back up when I need them to be? Right? Or are they going to be home sitting on the couch saying, hey, I'm getting unemployment, I'm getting taken care of, but I'm going to go start looking for other work. The incredible thing that has came out of all of this is I've seen so many small businesses and communities pull together. I've seen so many small businesses that don't have the type of cash that are doing every single thing in their power to make sure that their team is taken care of, to make sure that people are getting paid. Really, none of this has even come down to how much is the government going to give me. For most of my clients, that wasn't even a consideration. They were just saying, what do I need to do to make sure that my team gets paid? Because at the end of the day, my team is the most important thing for my business. And I'm doing everything that I can to keep them on payroll and to keep them employed. And just seeing that kind of, community and that kind of dedication has really been one of the silver lining in all of this. All right. So we got some questions on this. I'll hop into a couple real quick. So Mike asked, is this going to be a flat 600 no matter what you qualify for, or a sliding scale up to 600? So just like unemployment benefits, that's going to be a sliding scale. And so it doesn't mean that everyone's automatically going to be able to get an extra $600. It means that the max wages that you can get is increased by $600. And so that will go into the calculation. All right. Some other people on here ask about contractors or self-employed. It is extended to those as well. So obviously, if you're a contractor and you're self-employed, you're still eligible to get unemployment benefits. For the most part, it just becomes a little bit of a trickier situation. All right. And then Carmine asking, was this every state or is it state by state? And so state by state is going to come up with what your max weekly unemployment is, but the $600 increase is rolled out for every single state out there. All right. Perfect. So let's get into the next one. We got a lot of good questions here, guys. I want to get into all of this, but there's really just not enough time for me to get into all my issues and answer every one of these questions. All right. So please feel free to reach out afterwards, and we'll try to do best we can to handle these questions. Like I said, if you're a current client of ours, you already know how to reach me. If you're not a current client of ours, feel free to reach out if you're not getting the need that you are from your current professionals. If you do have a good relationship with your accountant, with your banker, these are the type of questions that I'd be asking them directly. All right, I know that this is the law that came out. How does this affect me? And what would you recommend that I do on a day-to-day basis? Because the answer that I have for someone might not be the same answer for you, right? You could have a certain situation where it makes sense for you to just lay off all your employees, right? And I could have another situation where it just makes no sense to pay off all your employees. Also, for an individual company, it might make sense to lay off this employee versus that one. And we won't be able to kind of get into those specifics without knowing more about your business. All right. So two other big things on the personal side of things. So one of them is retirement rules. And so as of right now, if you're not at full retirement age and you pulled money out of your retirement account, you're going to get hit with a penalty. With this new stimulus package, what they've done is they've relaxed that. So if you're able to pull money out of a retirement account without paying any of those penalties, and then you also have 3 years to pay that back into the retirement fund. Required minimum distributions, if you're of retirement age, they've also relaxed the rules on those. Okay, so those are both something that I would be talking to my financial advisor to see what my options are. At the end of the day, pulling money out of a retirement account is the last option. It's kind of one of the last options I put out there, but it's also an option. So if I'm a business owner, I just want to make sure that all of my options are and rate them. Right, we're going to start with the easy ones. Let's defer these loan payments. Right, let's start accumulating cash. And then once we start kind of getting into, dire straits, then I'm looking at stuff like deferring my sales tax, taking money out of my retirement, whatever it might be. But before I have to do that, I'm going and I'm talking to the professionals to see what my options are. And then the last one that's affecting a lot of people around the country on a personal level is federal student loan payments have all been deferred for 6 months. So when I was reading before, they are automatically going to defer those payments. You don't even need to call up. If you're in some sort of auto pay or something like that, I'd call them up just to confirm that they're going to defer those student loan payments if you have those. You're not going to get penalized. They're going to do 0 interest for 6 months. Just push those back. All right. So last, kind of the big piece that everyone is here for right now is the business side of things. All right. And so we're going to get into 2 key pieces of this business legislation and then get into the big payroll protection program that everyone here is interested about. So the first one we have here is a credit. And so it's a credit for wages paid during a downturn. And so what it is if you can prove that you were paying wages to your employees to either stay at home or to show up and there's no work to do, there is a credit out there to give your or that you could qualify for on how much you paid your employees up to $10,000. Okay, it's kind of an involved credit. We got to figure out what you were doing on the previous period last year, how much in wages that you had, and then to make sure that we have that true 50% downturn. Now, one of the things about this credit is if you do this credit, you are not eligible to get the payroll protection program money. And so this is something that I would probably not be looking at immediately, because as you'll see, the payroll protection program is a much better option and a much better long-term solution. The next thing that they have an option here is you can delay all of your payroll taxes for 2020. And so whatever you're collecting on payroll taxes today and throughout the rest of this year, you could actually defer all of those for an entire year, and you would not have to pay those till the end of 2021. Like I was talking about before with the retirement, and some people have been asking about sales tax and stuff like that. These are all options that are out there, but I'd be very, very, very careful about doing this. Okay. The IRS is not forgiving your payroll taxes. Your state or county is not going to be forgiving this sales tax. They're going to be deferring this. And that means at some point they're going to become looking for their money. And when they come looking for this money, it's not going to be nice. I'd much rather be borrowing from a bank and owing a bank, or borrowing from one of my vendors and leaving the payroll and sales tax as a last ditch effort. The last thing that we want to do is we want to get in bed with the IRS or get in bed with the state. And now we have an issue where they're garnishing wages, they're putting freeze on our bank accounts, because when we go to pay back this payroll tax amount, you might not have that on there. And so I'd be very, very cautious on doing that. Again, if you are delaying your payroll taxes, just like we talked about for the credit for wages, you are not going to be eligible for the payroll protection program. All right. Alejandro here, pay your taxes, don't get involved with that. Very, very, logical reason. I mean, that's really what I've been telling most of my clients here of, hey, it's an option, it's out there. I need to educate you that it's available, but really this is something that I'd probably not be getting involved in if it was me. Got another question here. We asked our payroll company about holding off on our payroll taxes for now, and they told me that they would not do that. And so really what we're going to see here is there's going to be a lot of news that some of your providers might not even have a way to do that. We've already been asked the question right now of, hey, can I defer my payroll taxes? Now, our payroll software is a little bit different. It's your responsibility, or it's at your discretion if you want to pay the taxes. But a lot of the big national ones out there, ADP, Paychecks, they don't give you an option if you want to pay your taxes or not pay your taxes. They're going to collect that every single week, no matter what. This would be something that I would estimate that people are going to be rolling out later this week, and you will have that option if you want to do that. Like I said before, I'd just be really careful about that. All right. So one last question, I'll answer this one here before we get into the next one. Is it more beneficial to stay open with little to no business, or close the door and allow the employees to collect unemployment? All right. This is a question that probably a lot of you have been going through your head here. And so one of the things that you need to ask yourself is what is the best solution for me in the long term and also in the short term? Because those could be two very different answers. Let's say that I have a shop, I got 5 employees there, and I'm operating about 20% of the efficiency that I normally do. Conventional logic in the short term would say, if I can turn wrenches, I'm going to lay everyone off, let them go collect unemployment, and I'm just going to satisfy this work myself to get through this. Obviously, 20% of work is still more than zero, so I'm going to still have my fixed expenses no matter what I do, so I'm going to try and bring in as much work as possible. Now, the thing that you have to think about, though, is that this is a short-term solution for a long-term problem. What's going to happen in 3 months when you need to go back to work? Are your employees still going to be there? Are you going to be able to pick them up off the couch and say, hey, we need to come back to work, we need to do this? What happens if another person in town is more successful, and at this time they're actually going out and they're hiring new technicians, new service advisors? Then when you go and stuff is starting to return back to normal, like we know it will, and is my team going to be in place, and am I going to be able to go back into business? And so you can see that short-term unemployment might be the option, but long-term, really my solution is, what can I do to get through this to make sure that I'm taking care of my team as much as I possibly can? While that might not be the best for my cash in the short term, it's going to come back on the end when I need my team, and I know that they're going to be there. All right. Again, Tina, this is not a question that's going to be a blanket answer for everyone. I recommend talking to your accountant. They know your financials, they know your cash position, and coming up with a solution that's going to be best for you. All right. So let's get into the one that everyone's here talking about. Payroll Protection Program, PPP is what they're calling this. So the Payroll Protection Program is a loan that is a SBA loan. All right. Not the SBA disaster relief is a program that was done directly between a business or an individual and the SBA itself. The PPP, the Payroll Protection Program, is going to be done between a business or an individual and their local bank. It's an SBA program, but a bank is going to be handling dispersing all of the funds. And so I've been talking to a number of clients and a number of bankers. A lot of them don't have all of the information out right now. And so when this plan was put in place, part of the bill says that the SBA has 15 days to come up with a program and regulations on how they're going to do this program. In the meantime, what I've been telling clients is reach out to your banker and say, hey, is this something that you guys are going to be able to help me out with? I've already talked to a number of clients where their bank is actually already starting the entire process. They're starting getting all the paperwork. What is a banker going to need from you? It's going to need pretty standard information, just like you go for any other loan, right? He's going to need your tax returns, whatever the most recent one we have filed. If 2019 is not filed, we're going to need 2019 financials. And a big different one that you're going to need for this one is you're going to need a lot of your payroll reports. Okay, so talk to your banker right now. Let's see if this is something that they're going to be able to handle. If it's not something that they're going to be able to do, then I recommend going and starting the process with someone else. In a perfect situation, I'm starting all of this work now. So at the end of that 15-day period, we can get closer and closer to getting our funding. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much a business gets. If you don't get that money when you need it, then what good is it, right? So let's get into this here. All right, so a lot of talk, does it need to be an SBA banker? And so it does not need to be an SBA bank. I would say if your bank already does SBA loans, they're going to be a lot more experienced on the process. They're going to be a lot more comfortable handing out these loans. These loans are going to be 100% guaranteed by the SBA, meaning that you're not going to sign any personal guarantees. You're not going to have to pledge any sort of collateral. It's just going to go out. Like I said before, though, you're going to be doing this all with your local banks. Your bank is going to be prepared with filing an application, getting all the necessary information to see if you qualify for this. Once they have all that information, how do I figure out how much money you're going to get? And so what they're going to do is they're going to take a look at last year's payroll and figure out what your average monthly payroll is. If your average monthly payroll after looking back for that entire year is $50,000, what they're going to do is they're going to take 250% of that and come up with the amount of loan that you're eligible for. So if you have $50,000 as your average monthly payroll, you're going to be eligible for a loan of $125,000. Okay, that is a lot of money. Essentially, what that's going to do is that's going to say, okay, you're going to qualify for a $125,000 loan. Essentially, you have enough money to pay your employees for the next 2 months. I think that the majority of businesses and shops out there are going to be able to say, hey, if I can get 2 months of runtime here, I know that I can make this out. I know I can make it through here. I know I'll have enough cash. But the biggest thing right now is we need to make sure that we're doing all of this stuff right now so that we're ahead of the curve. There's going to be a massive influx into all banks all around the country. So I want to make sure that I'm getting all the information that I need to my banker as soon as I possibly can. For my clients out there, most of this information is standard information, but if you have any questions on it and you need any documentation, we're here to help. You know how to reach us. Reach out and say, hey, Hunt, where do I get these payroll reports? Hey, Hunt, how do we fill out this application? Because there's a lot of questions on there that are a little bit of gray areas. What's the best way to set up my stuff for this? All right. I'm going to try and answer some of these questions here as they come. Yeah, so there's a lot of questions on, what does my bank need? What do I need to send to my bank? Reach out to your bank. All banks are going to do this probably a little bit differently. The program itself is going to be operated by the SBA, but at the end of the day, the bank has different ways that they process loans and they underwrite these things. And so most of the stuff is going to be pretty normal information. The only thing that's not going to be normal that you wouldn't usually give to a bank is a lot of the payroll information. And so that's going to be your quarterly payroll reports, your end of year W-2s, and then possibly some more detailed payroll summaries so they can figure out how much of credit that you're going to get. Someone's asking if they're going to need personal tax returns or business tax returns. They're probably going to need both. I would make sure they have both of those handy. Okay. So as far as how much of this is going to be forgiven, so what happens is they're going to take your payroll over the last year. Now, we're not sure if they're going to use just the payroll or if they're going to use the payroll and benefits. From what I've been reading, it's just going to be the amount of payroll that you have and multiply that times 2.5 or 250%. Now, if you can turn around and you prove that you use this money to pay for employees whether that's payroll taxes, benefits, insurance, retirement plans, or if you use this to pay for rent, to pay for utilities, to pay for qualified mortgage payments or the interest portion of those, then all of that amount will be forgiven, okay? At the end of the period, it's usually going to be about 6 months that they're going to require you to fill out a certification form. At the end of that certification, you're going to fill out and say, okay, I got this $125,000. Here's how I spent that money. Ideally, you already spent all of this money on qualified expenses, and you will not have to pay the government back any money. If you get a $125,000 loan forgiven, it is not even going to be taxable to you. And I saw that question pop up before. Is this going to be taxable if they forgive this amount of the loan? It is not. Right now, from everything that we're showing, this is going to be 100% free money for you. All right. Good question here. So Jody said, is there any advantage to using a bank that does SBA loans versus one that doesn't? So really, if I'm going to talk to a bank, I want one that already knows who I am, right? Because that's already going to get me a little bit farther in the door. They're not going to need to verify my employment. They're not going to be able to verify my business. They already know that I'm in operation. Now, if that's an SBA lender, great. If it's not, I'm not necessarily ruling them out. Now, if I'm going and my current bank, or I don't have a very good banking relationship, and I'm going to look for someone to do this payroll protection loan, I'm going out and I'm looking for someone that's an SBA lender, because they're going to be a lot more comfortable with this, and they're probably going to be getting this information a lot faster than other banks will. All right, let's see. We've got other questions here. So Jody said, is it over last year or the past 12 months to date? So there's been a lot of information coming out of this. From the information that I was reading in a bill, they were going to go off 2019 information. Now, I just got some information from one of a client of ours that's actually applying for this, and they're actually looking for the last 12-month period. So they're looking from April 1st, 2019 to March 30th, 2020. So they're looking for that year period. I'm not sure we know exact specifics right now, okay? Good question, though. Here's a great question. So this is one that's been a question a lot, and especially a lot of people trying to make that consideration if they lay people off or put people on unemployment or reduce hours. If you've already laid off employees, does this disqualify you? No, it does not disqualify you. And so what this money they want you to do is they want you to use it on your current employees or to rehire employees that you might have furloughed or laid off within that 8-week period after you get this money. So if you laid off someone before, you can still use this money to bring them back onto payroll. You're not going to be disqualified for that. If they disqualified everyone that had laid employees off, then they would not be giving this loan out to really anyone. Okay. Good question here. Is this based off credit score or anything? So it depends on where you're reading. So a lot of stuff that I've read is you do have to have a minimum credit score, but the credit rating is pretty low. It's around 525 from those that I've read. Now, I have not seen that in an authoritative source to make sure that that's an actual SBA requirement, but that's just what I've been reading. So I'd talk to your banker and see if this is something that you need to be worried about. Jack, hey Jack, how are you? So good question here. Will the bank ask if we apply for any other loans like the SBA disaster loan? Yes, they will. Okay, so they're going to ask if you've applied for any of these other SBA disaster loans, and they'll give you guidance on that. It's a possibility that they could say, if you did apply for it, that we'd like you to remove the application, or if you did apply for it, the amount of money that you get for the SBA disaster loan will reduce the amount that you can get from this new payroll stimulus package program. It does not rule you out completely, though. Tammy, if we take this loan, will it cause us issues in applying for a commercial loan in the near future? I can't see any reason why it would, right? If we're going to get this loan, especially if you're going to get the entire amount forgiven, I don't see why that would have any impact on what you're doing. Essentially, it's not like you didn't even have the loan if you get the entire amount forgiven on it. Now, let's say worst case scenario, if you were to get this loan and you didn't use it to pay for all qualified expenses, and at the end of the period, you still have an outstanding balance of $30,000 that you have to pay back. What they're going to do is they're going to extend that and turn that into a loan, and you pay that back over the next 10 years at 4% interest. Again, worst case scenario, that's a pretty low rate. All right. So let's see if we got into everything here. So it's going to be turned into a 10-year loan. Yeah, if you've already applied for the SBA disaster loan, you're not disqualified. I'd be talking to my banker about that. If I've already applied to the SBA disaster loan and they're already processing it, I'd just be talking to my bank and saying, hey, is this going to negatively impact me? What is the situation? Let's say I do get the SBA disaster money. How's that going to affect this new loan? And before I make any sort of rash decisions like canceling or removing that application, I'm just talking to my banker. I'm talking to professionals to see what they need to do here. All right. So that's really all I got. I'm just going to try and go down here and answer questions as soon as I can. So if you have a question, let's listen to see if someone else has already asked this before we get into it. All right. So Mike, are officer salaries included in this? They are included in this. The only stipulation is if you or any of your employees makes more than $100,000, they're going to take that into consideration. So if you make $150,000 for calculating your average monthly payroll, it's only going to be calculated for $100,000, not $150,000. All right. And so Reed just came in here and held up a sign asking, if you have multiple businesses, can I apply for multiple loans? Yes, you can, right? And so it's going to be for each business you can apply. Gail, can you apply for this if you already have a line of credit in place? Yes, you can. This is going to be for everyone that you can apply. So Paul, so they will take a payroll for 1 year. They're going to take your payroll for 1 year. They're going to figure out what your average monthly payroll is and multiply times 2.5. And this will be the total loan that is available to you. You got that exactly right. Ryan S., please repeat qualified expenses. So qualified expenses that you can use to minimize the amount that you have to pay back is going to be employee costs. So payroll taxes, benefits, health insurance, 401k, utilities, rent payments, and then the interest portion of qualified debt. Okay, those are all going to be qualified expenses. Cody asking a good questions here. If we purchased stores mid last year and beginning of 2020, are we able to account the payroll and the PPP amount or only amount that my company paid last year? So there's different stipulations in there about how to calculate someone that doesn't have a full year of payroll, and they will actually be able to take it in and prorate those different items on there. All right, Reed's got another question here. Gotcha. Reed's coming in holding up signs here like I'm a teleprompter. So Michael, are 1099 employees same as W-2 payroll employees? Yes, and so contractors that should be treated as wages are going to be treated just like they are employees. Now, if you issue a 1099 to a vendor for services, that's not going to be treated the same. But if you have a 1099 employee, he's truly a contractor working for you, that will be looked at very similar. Jan, asking a great question here. Will rent be a qualified expense if we also own the property in a different company? And so this is one of a good question here that we're going to have to keep our eye on. As of right now, it is saying that all rent expenses are going to be qualified. Now, what if you're the landlord? How do they stop people from saying that I'm going to increase my rent or decrease my rent? As of right now, they can't penalize you just because you are your own landlord. So I cannot see that being an issue right now. Sierra Service Center, SBA has a loan repayment penalty. Will this also be forgiven? Yes, this loan has 0 prepayment penalties on it. If you don't have the entire amount forgiven and you're going to hold this on for 10 years and you want to pay it off early, there's going to be no prepayment penalties. There's going to be no SBA fees associated with that. At the end of the day, if it's 4%, I'm probably not going to look at repaying that for a little bit because that's about as close to free money as we can get. But again, at the end of the day, we want to be debt free. And I know a lot of people want to pay this off. And so you will not be penalized for that. All right, so I'm trying to get here. We got a lot here. So Steve, as of right now, health insurance costs are included in that list of items that are qualified. And so what they're looking to do is they're looking for you to pay your employees and also their associated benefits go along with it. And so this wouldn't be doing a whole lot of good if they were going to say, hey, I'm going to pay for you, I'm going to give you money to pay your employees' wages, but not to pay any of their benefits. So if you cover some or all of your employees' health insurance, that's going to be covered in it. If you have a retirement plan, that's going to be covered in it as well. And so Keith, good question. So Keith is asking, is only payroll used to calculate the PPP benefit? That is true. So there was a lot of talk on how they're going to calculate this. I think for simplicity's sake, what they did was they said, let's figure out what the payroll cost is, because that's fairly easy to do. Every single person in the country is filing quarterly payroll reports, which gives us a pretty concrete number off of that. And they're going to use those to calculate your PPP benefit. If they were to put stuff in like utilities, rent, qualified loan payments, it's going to become very tricky to calculate the eligible amount. That's why they chose to just do payroll. All right, so I'm trying to get here as fast as we can. Austin Miller, 401k. Yes, 401k is going to be covered on there. Kevin Gibson, how long before this info was sent out to banks? I've called both of mine. They have no clue. Both banks are huge as well and do lots of SBA loans. This is going to be something that's going to be changing every single hour. Like I said before, I have a client that has already started the process of applying for this. And I think what the bank did is they know kind of the guidance to go, and they're going to go off on those assumptions. Obviously, before anything is finalized here, they're going to get the final word from SBA. But most of the banks are starting to figure out, okay, this is what we need to do internally to get 99% of the information in. We know we're not going to be able to complete this 100%, but if we can start to process, then once we get the official guidance from SBA, we'll be able to do it 100%. IRA match. IRA match is going to be included on that as well. Yep. So Tim, good question here. Thanks for joining us today, Tim. So this could be viewed as free labor if the government pays our wages and we're still producing labor dollars. So I think his question is shops are deemed as an essential service. So essentially what you're going to be doing is you're going to be getting you're going to be getting money to pay your employees, but then those employees are also going to be turning around and hopefully billing some hours as well. Yes, one of the big talks was our essential service industry is going to be penalized because of this, because you are still able to produce money. Now, I have some shops that are significantly decreased sales. I have some shops that have actually increased, and some shops that are staying about the same. At the end of the day, there's no way for them to penalize essential service industries, because if they start penalizing essential service industries for being open, then you risk having those essential services stop, and that's the last thing that they want to do. All right, so we got a lot of questions. Will hiring new employees present a problem since overall payroll costs will increase? And so we got to look into the specifics on how it's going to be taken into consideration. There is some kind of complicated things on how much is going to be forgiven. It all has to do with how many employees that you're maintaining on payroll. At the end of the day, what they're looking for you to do is they're looking to you for either maintain the amount of employees that you had on there before or grow. I can't see any reason why you'd be penalized for having new employees. The new employees aren't going to get you any more money because they're not going to be taken into consideration for your calculations. But going forward, you're not going to be penalized for hiring someone out of the workforce. Great question here, Mac. How do we apply for existing SBA loan payments for 6 months? And so this is a big thing that has come out. So if you have an SBA 7A or any other SBA programs right now, what the SBA has come out and said is they're going to defer all payments for 6 months. And on top of that, they're not only deferring your SBA payments, they're actually going to be paying your SBA payments for you. And so, Mac, if you owe $500,000 right now, the SBA is going to automatically defer those payments and pay those payments for 6 months. At the end of the 6 months, you're going to start paying again, but now you're going to only owe the SBA $475,000, whatever it might be. But this is pretty much free money. They're going to pay these payments for you for 6 months. There's nothing that you have to request. It should automatically be taken into consideration here within the next week or so. I reach out to your bank to make sure that they know or that they have a process in place, and make sure that I don't need to change any of my auto pay settings or anything like that. All right. I'm just reviewing. This is stuff coming in as fast as I can go. So can we withdraw from our Roth IRA if needed? Yeah, I mean, Roth IRA is always an option to withdraw from. So, if we're withdrawing up to what I put into my Roth IRA, there's going to be no penalties whatsoever. If I go over and above that, then we're going to be talking about like what we did before. It's not going to be a penalty, but I need to pay that back over 3 years. Mr. Mark joining in here. So payroll's every 2 weeks. How long before the loan is approved and we get money? So we don't really know yet because we don't know how long it's going to take for the SBA. And also it comes down to the individual bank that you're dealing with. So this money is actually going to be coming directly from your bank. And so if you're dealing with a local regional bank in your area, they're going to say, Mark, you qualify for $150,000. They're going to actually write you a check out of their money, and then they're going to turn around and get that money reimbursed by the SBA. So as long as they're comfortable with the process and they know they're going to get reimbursed with this money, it's realistic to think that at the end of the 2 week, when the SBA program has to be up and operational, that we could be pretty close to funding for most of these banks. Now, in practice, we'll just have to see what happens. But like I said before, $125,000 is great for your business, but not if you get that money in September. The government is smart enough that they know that they need this money and you need it now. Okay. So we're going to answer a couple more questions here and we're going to get off. Ezra, we have employees that rely on bonuses. Will the bonus be a qualified expense? Yeah, this is going to be something that's just going to have to do with payroll. Now, I'm sure that there's going to be some stipulations in there as far as, it has to be in line with what they were making before this. But there's a lot of technicians out there that are, their pay is based on bonuses or commissions or something like that, and that would be a qualified expense. All right. Can a bank refuse to do this? Banks, it's up to them on what they want to do. I think we might see some of the smaller local banks that just aren't comfortable with this saying, you know what, this is not something that we're going to be interested in. Most other banks out there know that if they tell a customer that they're not going to do that, they've probably lost that customer because they're going to go somewhere else for all of their banking needs. I can't imagine many banks not doing this. Really, what I want to do is I just want to make sure that this bank is capable of doing this. The last thing I want is to be spinning my wheels with some local bank that's not familiar with this. And then 3 weeks down the road, they just can't figure this out and I don't have my money. I want to make sure that my bank can do this and I feel that they're competent enough to do this going forward. All right, let's do 2 more here. And so, yes, like Monique said, if you're a Parmelis client, you need help with this, just reach out to us. That's what we're here for. If you're not a client of ours, reach out to your accountant. This is the time that you need to be leaning on your accountant, that you need to be leaning on your professionals. No one should be expected to do these applications by themselves. Even just assembling all of this backup documentation can be daunting. We have all this information for you. If we can't get it for you, we can print it out fairly easily. Just reach out to us. Reach out to your professionals, lean on them. I know that I have a lot of clients that we haven't talked to in a while, and they kind of were operating their business and they didn't really need us right then. But this is kind of the time that you've realized, when you do need to work with professionals and people that are there for you. Because when you need them, you need to make sure that people are available. People are there to answer questions. People are being proactive on this, not reactive, right? We need to get ahead of this and see what do we need to do now to make sure that we're setting ourselves up well. So Brian, we'll finish off Brian with our last question here. So a lot of shops have been advised to cut their payroll, such as bonuses and commissions. What should they do? Okay. And so I've had this question come up a lot. All right. I need to get through this, right? So my biggest thing is, how do I get through this? If in the short term, I need to cut payroll, I need to cut hours, or I need to do something so that I can get through this and get to my loan money, then so be it. Could that come into consideration when they're calculating your benefits? Possibly. But at the end of the day, if it lowers the benefit that you're going to get, you still have the same amount of cash because you didn't pay that cash out on payroll. Right. And so what I'm doing is I'm talking to my bank. I'm trying to get an idea on when did they think that I'm going to be able to get funded for this and how much that's going to be. Once I have that amount and that date, then I can kind of set myself up accordingly. If I have enough cash to pay my guys full board between now and then, and that's what I want to do, then so be it. If I'm limited on resources and I'm limited on cash and I say I need to get through 3 weeks, but I can only do that if I reduce wages or reduce hours by 20, 30%, so be it. At the end of the day, I just need to get through this with my business intact and my workforce as much intact as I possibly can. All right. So let's see here. We got a thing. Please contact me. So Mike, reach out to me. Anyone here that needs, any sort of information, you have any questions on it, I'm going to put my email on here. All right. Best way to reach out to me, shoot me an email. Some of you guys probably have been getting inundated with phone calls. You can reach me by phone too. Just a heads up, I'm probably realistically going to be on the other line. So if you need something, leave a message for me. No one should ever feel like that you're bothering us, that you're bothering me, that you're bothering any of my team here. This is exactly what you pay an accountant for, is to be available to answer questions. I'd much rather you call, reach out, get your questions answered, run something by me before you try to do this on your own. Or even if you just say, hey, hon, I think I know what I'm going to do. I just want some peace of mind that this is the right direction. I don't know all the answers, but I will at least give my input in there to see what I would do or to give you some tools to be able to analyze this yourself. All right. Let's see if we have any other. Mr. Smith, unemployment rates locked or not? So I haven't seen any official guidance on the unemployment rates. I would have to imagine that this is going to be kind of a period where they're just going to pause unemployment rates. If they really increase everyone's unemployment rates based on whatever happens in this next 6 months, everyone's rates are going to skyrocket. I just don't foresee them doing that. All right. Good question, though. So other questions on here is this going to be available later? So yes, once I go off of this, if everything works according to plan, this should be available for on Facebook on demand, and then also on our YouTube channel on demand. So if you just search Parmelis on YouTube, Paarmelis, it's going to be on there. And then, like you said, majority of you guys are on our Facebook, so you'll be able to watch this on demand at your leisure. All right. Well, thank you all for addressing this, or thank you all for joining me on here. If you have any other questions, like I said, please feel free to reach out. At the end of the day, stay safe, wash your hands, take care of yourself, take care of your family, and take care of your team. And we will do whatever we can to help you as well. Thank you. Have a good day.